to the county fair, listening to the announcer, it was always
Mm-hmm.
intriguing to me. I mean, he was the he was the quarterback of the show.
Yeah.
He ran all the plays. Um, Obviously, I find out now that somebody is play calling most of the time, but the announcer still runs the plays during the rodeo, and I love it. I love the America, how we bring America
Mm-hmm.
in it, in our openings. I love how we talk about God and we pray and just our lifestyle, everything about it's all wrapped up in one. And as a little kid, all that all that combined inspired me to do what I'm doing now.
Now you're
And
certainly not old now.
no, I'm not. I'm not
How old are you
old.
now?
But I'm 27. I'll be 28 in June. So I'm getting up there, starting to tick away.
So do you are you on the horse in the arena with a microphone
It
a
kind
lot, or are
of
you up in the stands?
well, it just kind of depends on the rodeo. It depends on the atmosphere. There's some rodeos where there's just no possible way a person could announce at horseback.
Why?
Um, well, the things move really fast. Maybe the committee always has something going on, and
Mm-hmm.
then they're always bringing you stuff. They're always bringing you information, and sometimes arenas are not user friendly when you're horseback. I was actually in Blue Earth, Minnesota. That was my first ever PRCA rodeo,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a Barnes rodeo. Which, if you've ever been to a Barnes PRCA rodeo, 99% of the time the announcer's horseback, and that's just their style of rodeo. But at Blue Earth, Marty Barnes made the comment. He said, "I don't think we should do horseback here because the arena is so small. There's not enough places to get out of the way."
Mm, right.
Because I mean, when you're out there, everything is happening really fast. Like I've been in a couple of binds where I thought, why am I out here? Maybe I should just sit in the announcer stand, because
Yeah.
those during the bareback ride, and those bareback horses are so fast, they come flying by you and they'll run you over. And pickup men will run you over if you're not out of their way, and it can be difficult. So the setup in the rodeo depends on if we're going to be horseback, but
Mm-hmm.
there's something about being horseback though that just brings a lot to the atmosphere. It makes it more personable. Like you can ride up to the grandstands, and when you're doing your opening and you're talking about things, you can literally look people right in the eye, and you can get a vibe from that. You can
Yeah.
almost look into their heart and see them, which is pretty cool in a sense.
Well, and that's one of the things that I loved as a kid, being able to be right there and to have that personality. Because at the time, I mean, Bob at the time wasn't. Well, I guess he was a big deal. I didn't know it. He just was good, and he would always hang out along that fence for a while. And you you got to be a comic at some level to do that job well. But it was so fun because it's just real, and I love that the personal touch that you get from that. And I
Yeah,
mean, you lose that being up in the booth, I assume, right?
you do. And sometimes announcer stands like inside coliseums, you'll find like the National Western in Denver.
Mm-hmm.
Boyd Paul Hamus, a professional rodeo announcer. He's done the NFR with Bob like 20 sometimes.
Yeah.
He does a lot of his rodeos horseback, but at Denver, he is in the announcer stand, and it's the location of that announcer stand is open. He can turn around and give somebody a high five, in that
Yeah.
announcer stand. That's how close it is. But yeah, the personal aspect of just like I said, it depends on the venue, depends
Mm-hmm.
on the event,
Yeah.
and a lot of it depends on your horse that you're going to be on too. Because, gosh, if you're not on a good horse, it can be a train wreck in
Now,
the
is
ring.
that a horse that you have to provide, or do they do that for you?
A lot of guys take their own horses. I personally do not own a horse right now, so I'm pretty fortunate. There's a lot of great pickup men out there
Yeah.
that provide one. A lot of stock contractors provide one. I've had a hard time keeping horses sound. It seems like every time we get one, it always cripples itself or
Mm.
tries to kill itself, or you know, or eats too much. Maybe that's it. But no,
Right.
it's a lot easier to to have a pickup man say, hey, you can ride my horse tonight,
Mm-hmm.
and you can pay him something or buy his dinner or whatever, make it worth his while. And stock contractors, they're always pretty good about having a horse available, and 9 times out of 10, they're all good most of the time.
Yeah. Have you always been a musician as well?
Yeah. So I love playing the guitar. I actually learned how to play when I was in high school, and I guess I need to rewind. I was third or fourth grade, and I was taking lessons. And I actually told my mom one day, I was like, I don't need to take these lessons anymore. Like I would go there. Yeah, wise thing for a 10-year-old to
Right.
say, or however old I was. I I would go to these lessons, and they would show us what to do. And I would go home and I wouldn't practice.
Hmm.
And then I'd go back to the lesson and I would just be able to play it. And the lady was always like, "Oh my gosh, Corey, you must practice so much and do all this stuff." And my mom's sitting over here scratching her head like, "No, he never picks up his guitar ever." So needless to say, I put it down for a long time. And when I was a sophomore in high school, I felt like I was supposed to pick it up again. And I started going to church earlier and getting with our guitar player, and he'd show me how to play a chord one week, and the next week he'd show me another one. And eventually I had 4 chords in my arsenal,
What
which
more do
is
you need there?
G, C, and D. You can play
Nice.
almost every country
Yeah.
song and every Christian
Oh,
song
yeah.
on the planet with those chords. So
Nice.
yeah, that's always been something that's been pretty cool. I've been pretty passionate about singing and playing the guitar.
And
It's been
you said you're currently in just the very edge of Missouri, is that right? Or are
Yeah,
you
so
in?
I'm from Southwest Missouri,
Okay.
a little place called Conway. It's about 50 miles outside of Springfield, Missouri. Right now, currently, I am at the Ryan Ranch in Wyoming, which is
Mm.
about 30 miles from Belfouche, South Dakota. So that's kind of confusing.
Right, yeah. The west, the mountains, it all kind of goes together out there.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm in the Black Hills. There you
Nice.
go.
There it is.
I'm only an hour and 23-minute drive from Mount Rushmore. So
Okay, being that close, have you been there?
I have been there. It's
Okay.
been a long time, but I have actually been there. It's a pretty cool place.
Yeah, it is pretty amazing to see. Um, the so you're living there. You cattle ranch, is that correct?
Yeah, so actually at home, my dad and I, we have a herd of cows, and then my fiance's family, they have some cows out here on their ranch.
So,
So
so you say fiance. When is that changing?
July 31st.
Nice.
July 31st.
Congratulations. That'll be awesome.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I'm
Are
pretty excited.
you gonna end up living there, or you guys have somewhere else you're gonna go?
Well, that's kind of funny. We're kind of getting pulled lots of different directions right now. We know we're going to start out here. She's got a job, and pretty good job in Rapid. So we're kind of just
Awesome.
figuring out where we're going to be, where we're going to end up. But I would say eventually we won't be here. But to tell you that location, I have no idea.
That's all right. We won't hold you to it.
That's fine.
Newlyweds can move around. That's fine. All right.
Right.
Let's dig a little bit into what's going on in the world today. Your livelihood in
Yep.
the announcing world relies on packed stands at some level, events that require people to come into them. What did 2020
Right.
do to the rodeo world, to your career, to just the mental state of kind of where you were at? What happened?
So obviously everyone's going to have a pretty similar story with 2020. It was pretty crazy, because the week before all of it went down, when they shut things down, we just had the American at AT&T Stadium,
Mm-hmm.
and so I had literally just announced the Cowboy Channel Junior NFR, and things were looking really good for the year. And I was actually fixing to go to Rodeo Houston to hang out when they made the call to cancel it. And I just thought to myself, like, did they really just cancel Rodeo Houston? And then, all the other, I think Rodeo Houston was the first actual event to cancel. So then the NBA followed,
Mm.
the MLB
Mm-hmm.
followed, the hockey leagues. But like Rodeo Houston kind of set the stage for that. And all these rodeos started getting canceled. I'm sitting here looking at my schedule going, oh my, like, how are we going to make a living? Because technically under a contract, even if you have a contract under a clause, under a national emergency pandemic, that contract means nothing,
Right.
which in a sense, these rodeo committees, I mean, you, a lot of guys don't expect the committees to pay us anyway if we're not going to be there because like we know they're being affected too.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the one thing that held my composure together, obviously clinging to my savior.
Yeah.
Uh, the Lord provided the whole time through all that. It was amazing to see what he did during 2020. But the other thing that held us together is we were all in the same boat. It's not like I could sit around and have self-pity like this is happening to me, this is
Right.
happening to me. No, this is happening to everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And but yeah, we got to have fans. And it's funny, like South Dakota never did shut down. Um I announced 3 rodeos in South Dakota in 2020 and no restrictions, no masks, no nothing, and life was normal. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, it's crazy. And then you go to another place and it's like a ghost town. Um, there was a couple other rodeos that they wanted you to wear masks while you were in meetings and all this stuff. And we're like, what? Like because I don't know where you stand on all that, but I never wore a mask. And people are probably going to be sending you hate mail now, like, oh, he's a super spreader.
Yeah,
This,
way to
this,
go.
this. Yeah, no kidding. But I just don't believe in that. I believe if it's my time to go, it's my time to go. And I just kind of had to stand firm in my faith a couple times. And here we are. I've made it over a year, haven't wore a mask, and we're getting back into the things. Getting things are starting to roll again. And South Dakota once again still hasn't shut down. They just had the Black Hills, or I get yeah, the Black Hills Stock Show and
Yeah, I think
Rodeo
so. Yeah.
Rapid,
Mm-hmm.
and it was awesome. And then all these other rodeos are following suit. Rodeo Reno, that the Reno Rodeo, they just released a deal that said that where they're going to be full capacity thanks to the governor of Nevada, which is huge.
Wow.
The Red Bluff Roundup going on this week in California of all places, it's happening. Full capacity, whatever. Um, and then all the other rodeos in Texas are happening now too. So yeah, people are starting to show up. It's definitely turning around. So that's a good sign.
Mm-hmm. Any? Do you ever do anything with the Calgary Stampede up there in the Canada?
No, I never have. I know Bob. We were talking about Bob Tallman
Mm-hmm.
earlier. He's been a part of Calgary for however many years. I don't think Calgary is going to happen this year.
Well,
I haven't
their
seen a
government up there is really doing some crazy things. They're giving their police force extra rights or leeway and authority to stop you and ask you why you're out and about. You have to prove why you need to be away from your home now. It's
wow,
crazy, and that's just to the north of us a little bit, and
wow.
it's wild. Being in South Dakota, we're 12 miles away roughly from Minnesota, and so I get to see both ideologies is almost how it feels.
Mhm.
That state has their own belief system. South
Yeah.
Dakota tends to have a different unique belief system. And
Yep.
yet it almost seems like nothing's changed here. I know there's some has, but then you drive 10 minutes away and it's like you're going to another part of the world. And that is so bizarre that we can have that because if I understand, and I'm by no means a scientist, but if I understand anything to do with an airborne anything, that border means nothing. And
No.
so it either will affect people the same or it doesn't. It's just a bizarre world we're in. We were down in Texas a couple weeks ago with my family, and it was right around the time that they had um, pulled back the mandate, the government
Yeah.
mandate for masking and all this stuff. And it was kind of wild because I was like, okay, I can feel like I do here in South Dakota.
Right.
Not really. it still was really odd. It felt like you were still in another part of the world, with some of the things, and most of it had to do with the businesses that were very much. And one store we went into, I bet they had 40 or 50 signs around every entrance door, and they had cops inside the store by the door to apparently make sure you're compliant. And it just was weird. And as a business owner, I get, some private business, maybe they want to make some rules. I think if they're going to be making rules like that, they need to be able to make any kind of rule they want. And if they're, if they're going to mandate a medical procedure to get in the door, then where does it end? I mean, do I need to have certain kinds of surgeries to get into a store? I don't know. It's just an odd world.
It's a pretty odd world, and I know I'm a believer. Obviously, I've already mentioned that, but we talk about the end times and all these things that are going on right now, and I don't think. I mean, I do think the end times are near, in a sense, but we don't know the time of day. But then again, part of me feels like we're not quite done yet, because everything that you just named off has everything to do with a world power.
Yeah.
And what world power does is brings a few people in charge of the entire world. And they pretty much tell you what to say, when you can say it, how to say it. And they get you to, I mean, more or less, it's world communism. I mean, I'll just go ahead and say that. And that's exactly what they want. And honestly, I don't know if we're supposed to get political on here or not, but
wherever it goes, it goes.
The only thing standing in the way of that is our firearms, is our Second Amendment right as Americans. And what a unique thing that our founding fathers knew over 240 years ago, that we needed guns to protect ourselves from higher powers, and that our government was supposed to be ran by the people for the people. And it states in our Constitution that if the government becomes too big, it is the right, and too powerful and oversteps its boundaries, it's the right of the people to take it back. And, I hope and pray that that never happens. And I don't think that it will. I think that America has woken up, especially after this last election. I think they've realized, like, okay, like, we made a mistake, and we're going to get back on track of things, because freedom is a very valuable thing. And you look at history, and all these places that had freedom at one point, they lost it. America is the longest running country in world history that's held on to freedom this long. But on the flip side, all those other places that we could talk about, they all had a place to go when they lost their freedom. But now every continent, every country is occupied by somebody.
Yeah.
Like, this is it. The world's full. Like, there's no more expansion. There's no more westward expansion. Like, let's get in the wagon or hop on the Mayflower.
Yeah, it's called Mars.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm not going that. Right. You probably will have to wear a mask there. Oxygen mask. Right. So I'm out. I'm out. But yeah, I mean, I could go on this kick, but I mean, America is the only thing standing in the way of this world power that a certain few people want. And that world power is a scary thing, because if that passes, me and you won't be having this conversation on a podcast when it does.
Yeah.
And that's a scary thing.
Are we close? Okay. How much longer do you think that America can hold on to that? Let's call it freedom. Now, we can probably debate whether we're actually free or not.
Right, because
we think we are. How close is that to being gone?
Well, that's a very good question, because you're always one generation away from losing it. I believe, was that Ronald Reagan that quoted that?
Sounds right.
Yeah, it sounds about right. You're always one generation away from losing your freedom. Well, I will tell you, our founding fathers, when they sat down to create our Constitution and our Bill of Rights, they were arguing and bickering, and they quoted, or there was a pastor in the room, a preacher, and he said, "Hey, we haven't even prayed yet." And they all kind of stopped. I mean, in my mind, I picture them all stopping and looking around like, oh, yeah, like we haven't prayed, like, duh. So he pulls out his Bible and he quotes Psalm, I think it's Psalms 35 or 135, basically talking about how, hey, Lord, like cast us from our enemies, like do not let our enemies, overrule what we're trying to do here. Like we trust you, we put our guidance in you. And because of that prayer, it was said that that prayer was heard from blocks away. Like
Mm.
people heard them praying down the streets in Philadelphia. And I believe that God always answers prayers. And I believe that is one prayer that he's continuing to answer. Now, the end times and all this stuff that I was just talking about, we don't know the time of day, but I can tell you this, that he will come when we least expect it. And with like right now, with all this uncertainty in the world, I don't think that's when he's going to come, because that's when everybody is clinging to him.
Mm.
I still think there's going to be a time of peace. So I think freedom is going to reign for a while. Like I don't think we've seen the best America yet, is what I'm getting at. I don't think their world power that they want to do, I don't think it's going to be realistic. Like it's only like 7% of the world that believes in that. And I just don't think we're that close. Like, yeah, it seems like we're that close because Facebook and Instagram and all these social media platforms and Fox News and CNN, it's all propaganda. Everything's propaganda. And I just don't think the world is listening to them anymore. You know? I just don't think they are. So I believe I believe the best America is yet to come, and that we're gonna live in the land of the free. Our kids are gonna live in the land of the free, and who knows, the whole world may live in the land of the free. And there may be a huge revival coming with that too, where the Lord's gonna move and people are gonna get saved and come to know Him, and it's gonna be the best time of peace we've ever seen. Then He might come and take us all.
Mm.
I know that's a lot of information and little time, and that's I'm not a philosopher or theologist or whatever they call them. I'm just telling you what's on my heart. But that's kind of what I believe. The best is yet to come.
How do we, because I follow your socials a little bit,
Yeah.
and you've been pretty vocal recently about um, regards to the NRA and gun control, and
Mhm.
what is the answer from, just I, I don't know, is it the 10,000-foot view, let's say, um, to what is being called by a certain side of politics as
Mhm.
a gun violence epidemic? Uh, what's the real answer there?
That's hard to say because for years, you look at history. History always repeats itself, and you look back on some of this stuff, and you you see violence. You see people killing each other. You see people hurting each other. You see countries wanting power. You see all these things happening, and I have a hard time believing that we have a gun problem, because I mean you look at history. China, I just read an article the other day. I can't remember what the article was, but China, their government, they just push they're just killing people just
Hmm.
because they don't want them anymore. Like they're just, if they believe a certain way, they're just rounding them up and killing them, and for no reason. And you have, like, you could read back to Germany where they gathered up the Jews, and I mean there's been violence since day one. And do I think that we can stop guns from killing people at random? I don't think there's any way you can do that, because regardless of what people don't understand is, if nobody in the world owned a gun, if
Mm-hmm.
there was no gun, no if guns weren't even a thing, nobody even knew what they were, they would still find a way to hurt somebody, because it's a sin. It's our sinful nature to do that.
So
And
is the real problem a sin problem?
well, I think not necessarily a sin problem, but it's a maybe people don't understand the truth problem.
Hmm.
Um,
What does
which
that
I
mean?
know that's well, I know that's a difficult thing to understand. So like what I believe, like the truth on the word, the Bible, the Lord talks about all throughout the history that these countries have been fighting one another, people have been killing one another, and it's just pure evil. It says, people will be filled with evil spirits and evil thoughts, and there will be you'll hear rumors of wars, and I mean, gosh, it's so complex. Like I can't even begin to tell you. But like for me, like in my heart, like I'm saved. I know Jesus as my personal savior, and I want everybody to know that too. But I don't like you. We could get into this race thing. Like I don't see race like people do. Like I just don't see that. Like I love all people. I think all people are created equal. Like our Constitution says that, under God's image. And I just want to love people, and I want to tell them about Jesus. But I also think I can do that while owning a firearm, because the world is a dying, decaying place. And because of that, there's always going to be someone trying to conquer. There's always going to be someone trying to take over. There's always going to be a Pharaoh. There's always going to be a Hitler. There's always going to be a Putin, or you could sit here and name off all sorts of world leaders. But like those guns and common citizens like me, that protects our freedom. Um, and I don't think there's an answer for gun violence. I really don't think there's an answer for that, because I don't know if you've ever. I'm not very well equipped for all this today, but George, there's a video on YouTube, and it's of George W. Bush, and it was off the record, like nobody knew that he was videotaping, and it was talking about some of the school shootings that have
Mhm.
happened in America. And in that video, he says if the American people ever knew, what we've done, they would hang us. That was his
Mm.
exact words. And if it's on a video on YouTube, but basically, who's to say this is a conspiracy theory? I don't like I'm not quoting this. But who's to say our federal government hasn't set these shootings up to get people to think a certain way, to think guns are bad, so they can take them away.
Well, that's certainly an interesting thought. It is somewhat telling, I guess, that
Right.
these weren't. I mean, we kind of had a multi-year, I don't want to say pause, but a lull, at least in reporting of these mass shootings.
Yes.
Just the other day, I was talking to some friends, and we were going through the list. According to some of the news outlets, there's been like 154 or 157, quote unquote, mass shootings in America in the last since
Mm.
January. Um, I they classify a mass shooting as anything more four or more um, victims, and so what I wonder is what happened that makes this now ramp up so much when it didn't appear to be ramped up 6 months ago.
Like
What's
like
different?
before the like what's the difference?
Yeah, I
Well,
mean,
I mean, obviously
I
the
have my thoughts, but I mean,
yeah.
what changed?
Well, I do think the news media is a big problem in our world today. They fill us with that they fill us with what people want to hear. Like we'll be honest, like that they use the latest and greatest, and they reword things. And because it's funny, you can see something on Fox News, Newsmax, CNN, you could see the same report
Hmm.
but get a different idea from all three of those, and that's the problem.
Does
you
that
know
come back to us having a truth problem in our society nowadays?
well, yes and yes, because people people can there's a way to get people to believe a certain way. um and words are a great way. Just changing a couple of words in a sentence can make you believe something way different. And you kind of have to have some values and some
Mm-hmm.
upbringing. And I think a lot, like if we're going to talk about guns, I think the biggest problem with guns is people people don't teach their kids about guns. We don't teach our kids about guns in school. My dad said when he was in school, you could take your hunter certification in high
In
school.
school.
In school.
Yeah.
And what a great tool, because guns are not bad. They are not bad. I mean, when used properly, I mean, they're a great there's something great. Like there's so much about it. Like I can remember my dad handed me my first gun, and he said, "Son, this is yours. And you got to take care of it. You're going to learn how to clean it. You're going to be able to learn how to clean it blindfolded. Like you're going to be able to take it apart and clean every piece of it blindfolded and put it back together." And he always told me how special it was about our freedom to own it.
Mm-hmm.
And he always told me, that we hope we never have to use them, but my golly, we can own them. And just because we own them, it's a huge deterrent for other things to happen in our world today. But my dad taught me to respect a firearm,
Mm-hmm.
and that it wasn't a toy, but it was a tool that you used. And that tool could be for hunting, for recreation, and gosh, Lord willing, I hope I never have to use it to defend myself.
Yeah.
But that's what it's ultimately for. But man, you hope and pray you never have to do that.
I
You
grew
know?
I grew up on Louis L'Amour, and
Yeah.
one of his sentiments was that a holstered weapon on the hip of someone who knew how to use it was more deadly than a gun that was out. And it was because the threat was there, the possibility was there, but you hadn't thrown everything on the table yet. And I think
Yeah.
that's fascinating. Understanding it, understanding what it's for, how to use it, and
Yep.
knowing the real consequence of using it is
Yes.
key. Absolutely.
Yep. And do I think that there should be more punishment for people who, and you know what the sad part is? A lot of these mass shootings, we never get to talk to the shooter.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever noticed that? Like they always commit suicide, or they always shoot themselves or do something. And it makes you wonder if we could actually talk to them and ask them why they're doing it.
Mm-hmm.
That would be an answer to a lot of our questions. And I'm not saying it'd be a solution, but it would be very interesting to see, like why did you do this? Like what went through your mind that you wanted to just go in somewhere and shoot a bunch of people? Because like that's like I just can't imagine. Like and I can't imagine having a family member die and something like that, or be a
Yeah.
part. Like you remember the Vegas shooting?
Mm-hmm.
I actually had a couple of friends that were at that concert.
Really.
Yes, and they were extremely affected by the outcome of that, and it's so sad to see them, because a part of them, they didn't like guns for a while. They did not like guns
Because of that event.
because of that event.
Mm.
Because and honestly, they felt helpless. That they
Mm-hmm.
didn't feel like they could do anything. Like they just felt like sitting ducks.
Yeah.
And like that's the sad part. But on the flip side, what if everybody there would have had a firearm? Like I'm not saying that's the solution, but you just said, a holstered gun is more deadly than a gun, setting out on a table or whatever. And if everybody had a gun, like, do you think that shooter would have still done that? Like, I don't know. It's something that we'll never put our minds on. But
Mm-hmm.
I want to. You probably know this story. So in 1941, after Japan bombed Pearl Harbor, they their ultimate plan was to invade the United States. Like that's what they wanted to do. And they could have very well easily got to California. Obviously our Pacific Fleet was destroyed at Honolulu,
Mm-hmm.
and they could have easily went to California and just started coming right across, but they didn't. And the main reason they didn't is because they did a study, and statistics showed them that 90 some percent of Americans owned a firearm,
They'd be walking
and
into a
not
problem.
and not just one firearm,
Yeah.
multiple firearms. And they said if we do that, we will awake we will awake the world's largest army. And the quote after that was something about, we may have already woken a sleeping giant anyway, which they did.
Yeah.
But that's why they didn't invade America, because people like you and I own a firearm, even though we're not. And I don't know if you own firearms or not. You haven't told me, but
I do.
but you do. But see, like me and you, we own firearms, and because of that, places like China,
Hmm.
Russia, Japan, they're not coming over here. They're not coming over here to do that nothing, because there's people like me and you who own firearms who don't want to use them. But my golly, if we're forced to, freedom wasn't just given to us. You know,
Yeah. What do you think about?
freedom was paid for.
Yeah, by blood. Um,
Yeah.
what are your thoughts on the talk of, you mentioned, if we could talk to some of these shooters and figure out what they were
Right.
thinking, what was that? Well, the anti-gun crowd wants laws on the books that will allow people to get their property removed from them if they are perceived to be a threat. Red flag laws.
Red flag laws.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on that concept, and if that's a road worth going down?
You know, what's crazy, you always see these stories that after these shootings happen, the FBI comes out and says, well, he was on our watch list or whatever.
Uh-huh.
Well, it makes you wonder, okay, well, why did they not go there and at least and maybe they did, maybe they go question them. I don't know. But then again, where does that line stop? Because if they get on my social media, they might think that I'm a threat.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And which in my case, I'm not. Like I'm just a freedom, like I just love freedom. And so I mean, there's a very fine line there. But it makes you wonder, how do these people get these guns? And see, that's another thing. Like they can't actually stop these people from getting guns right now. Like they just can't.
Well, but
Um,
that's their problem. I mean, or not the problem.
right,
That's their goal, is to make that be way more difficult for everyone. From what I hear from them, at least.
right,
So then they can stop these. So it's pre-crime, really. This is
right.
what's the
It's like
word? Minority Report. That movie. You're thinking about, it's a thought crime. You're thinking about this, and so we're gonna go arrest you because you were going to do something. And man, I don't think that seems against the whole concept of freedom and liberty, isn't it?
I think so. I mean, I think there's a fine line there. I also, I mean, obviously, if you're a felon right now, you actually, by law, you can't even own a firearm.
Okay, hold
So,
on. But before you go farther, what are your thoughts on that? I mean, if we the gun side,
mhm.
the pro Second Amendment, let's say that perspective, um, the idea is Congress shall make no law.
Mhm.
Should there be, like, what's a reasonable restriction, I guess?
Honestly, I don't really have one. I don't really have one because, I mean, that Second Amendment is it's so broad,
Mm-hmm.
and if you start manipulating the law and start adding things to the law, then eventually there is no Second Amendment.
Mm-hmm.
So it's such a fine line right there.
Well, and then the other idea, or the other piece of the Second Amendment, the words are well regulated militia. What does that mean? I mean, does that then open the door for a lot more regulation and rules, perhaps?
I'm not really sure and understand the context
Mm-hmm.
of that statement. Um, I do know a well-regulated militia. I would think that would mean like say for instance, me and you, we're in the militia. Like we're not enlisted in the army or the Marines or our military, but we are a part of the militia because we are rightful citizens that own firearms. We are law
Mm-hmm.
abiding citizens that own firearms. And, maybe I, the government has to be on your side, obviously, but that's such a fine line. Like, basically well-regulated militias. I really don't know. I don't really have an answer for that. That's kind of a unique thing because I
Yeah.
know the militia, if you read anything, the history on militia, that's the reason we won the Revolutionary War.
Okay. What? Because we didn't fight battles in a straight line waiting to get shot?
Exactly. Like we didn't, our ancestors didn't take their firearms up to King George and say, "Here, have my musket." They were hidden. I mean, they didn't know that they had them, and they fought in the trenches and the brush and in the swamps, and like that's what the militia is.
If the
And
Patriot movie by Mel Gibson was close to accurate, that seems like a stupid way to battle. All right, let's all line up. Go, you're up. And then
yeah, you're up.
is that why we play sports now? All right, we're gonna line up against each other. That's football. That's early football. Just fewer people die nowadays. I don't.
It's crazy how the tactics of war have changed over the
Yeah.
last, well, really over the last century or 100 years. But Swamp Fox, that's who Mel Gibson is supposed to be in that movie.
Mm.
Swamp Fox. And Swamp Fox, we still use his military tactics today. Like the Navy SEALs use his military tactics today, which is
Francis
absolutely
Marion.
incredible.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah.
Also known as Swamp Fox.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, and the British, they had no idea. They didn't know how to fight it because the rules of war was to line up in front of your opponent, and basically it was an intimidation factor.
Right, because we have more youth to expend. It's fine. We can just have more people that can die.
Exactly. Yeah. Look at all of our redcoats. And that isn't. Think about it. If you marched over this hill right over here,
oh man,
and you're wearing a blue coat,
yeah,
and you step over there. There's like 300 or 400 of you, and you step over, and there's 10,000 redcoats. I mean, that's pretty intimidating.
That would be terrifying.
But like in today's modern warfare, there could be 10,000 of you, and 5 people could be your worst nightmare. Because of the tactics that he introduced in the Revolutionary War.
Well, the military position of a sniper has fascinated me since I was a kid, and not because they're killing people, but their role. And a good friend of mine used to be a ranger sniper in his prior life, and it's fascinating because the job it's a personal position you have to take. You are checking these people out. You're getting close to them, and then you're removing them. And I've asked what's the mental state that you have to live under to do that.
I can't imagine.
And they're like there's constant psych evaluations for those guys because, and one of the things, the moment that they start enjoying what they're doing, get out of there, because that's not something you don't want to be on a joyride out there with that. I mean, because they're good, they're deadly, and it's not good. But that whole concept, and in Vietnam, I read a couple books about snipers there, and they were like, if they ever found a sniper, if the Vietnamese ever did, every gun turned on that position because they were so dangerous to the Vietnamese. And wow. First off, I'll sign up for that gig knowing that if they ever see me, it's over. It's crazy, crazy. So yeah, and that, I think that comes out of the idea that we're not going to just line up. We're going to try to win this thing at all costs almost.
Yeah, and I mean, it kind of makes sense, his tactics, okay, there's not as many of us, so let's spread out.
Yeah.
Let's be invisible, and let's just be a nuisance. And that's more or less what they were.
Yeah. Do you see video games as playing a detrimental role in maybe some of this today?
I really do. I remember when I was little, I used to have a couple of those games, and I remember my dad took them away from me, and I didn't really understand why at the time. And looking back, I was probably 10, 11, 12. Like that was a vulnerable stage for a young man. And I'm looking back, I'm really thankful that my dad took those games away because, we talked about what guns are and how to handle guns and the significance of them. And those video games, like they're just setting people up to go do something like that. And like the game Grand Theft Auto,
Yeah.
that has to be the worst game I've ever seen in my life. Like you can literally, we were just talking about this the other day with a couple people at church because the kids were playing some game before church, and I had mentioned like, you think that's a good idea? And we were like, yeah, probably, yeah, you're right. That's probably not a good
Hmm.
idea. And so we switched the games. We got Madden in there now, so
That's
it's all
better.
right.
Yeah.
Football. But but basically, it's like, all we're doing is teaching those kids that it's okay.
Mm.
Like that's all we're doing. And it's not okay. Like, do we need to know how to defend ourselves? Absolutely. But like you just said on those psyche valves for those snipers, when you start enjoying it,
Yeah.
that's when it becomes a problem. And who's to say that kids don't find a thrill in those games
Hmm.
and then want to go try it themselves, you know?
Yeah. What about
It's a
social media?
scary thing.
Facebook, the idea
Well,
that right now you can talk to the world and also hear back from the world instantly from anywhere.
social media is very unique. When used the right way, I think it's very powerful and influential. Sometimes I'll be honest. Sometimes I post things and I post them like on my stories, and I think, okay, maybe I should have not posted that,
Hmm.
or maybe I should have reworded that. Now, like my actual news feed, like where I'm posting a picture, like
Hmm.
I feel like those my posts are positive. I'm not negative towards anybody. I'm always uplifting. I'm always encouraging, and you can probably tell that I stand for what I believe in, and I'm not afraid to take a stand to keep believing in that.
Hmm.
But I think social media has ruined our society in a sense because there's some kids in our um, like kids at school and stuff that are struggling right now because they don't feel good enough because they can get on their social media platforms and they see all these other kids that are their age and they see everything that they could be that they're not,
Right.
and I think that plays a huge role in our mind. Like we get to believing something that we're really not inside of us. And I heard a sermon one time. It was called the Instagram version, and basically, this pastor was saying he showed a picture of him and his wife. They went to Starbucks before church and got a coffee. And it had their picture, holding their coffee, like, yeah, just went to Starbucks, heading to church. But he's like, this was taken this morning, but nobody saw about how me and my wife had a fight
Hmm.
45 minutes before this.
Yeah.
It was the Instagram version of your life. So when you're posting on there, you're posting the best version of you
Hmm.
to be somebody you're not in a sense. And I think it's big. Like I love the people who are so real. When they name off their struggles, like, hey, I struggle with this too.
Yeah.
But even if you're struggling, just know that you're not alone. And whatever aspect that is, those are my favorite platforms.
Hmm.
Um, but like this false narrative of your life is perfect on social media, I think it's really been
Yeah.
bad for society.
Well, and it's tough for kids. And I heard someone say the other day that um, one of the biggest problems with it in the school age is, normally before you could just hold a computer in your hand and get anything you needed
Yeah,
to. You were at school with your peers doing your thing. Then you left and you went home and you disconnected from your peers. You had time away. You weren't worried. You
yeah,
didn't hear from them. Well, now there is no disconnect ever. You're there. You wake
it's
up middle of the night sometimes. Half of these kids have their phones in their bed with them. So they wake up, they're texting, talking, reading timelines. Like you said, they're checking out this perfect world. And then they
that
go see
doesn't.
these same people. And then they come back home. They're still connected. There's no disconnect ever. And
Yeah,
that's got to do something to their mental state. It has to.
yeah. I mean, it really does because I mean, people need separation.
Yeah.
Even like I'm not married yet, but I know like there will be a time where it'll be nice to just have some me time, you know? And maybe that's why men like to hunt so much and fish. Maybe that's their me time. And maybe that's why women like to go shop so much. I don't know. But everybody needs their me time. And you're right. These kids that they don't get that. They don't get their me time.
Mm-hmm.
They're worried about what their friends are doing, because they're trying to outdo each other and live in this perfect non-existent world. And I did see a post, let's see here, a couple days ago. It was, I don't know who it was, but it was a picture of a phone sitting on a counter, and it was this little girl, or it was this girl that said her dad always took her phone away when she was a teenager at night. At 8 o'clock every night, he got her phone,
Mm-hmm.
and she didn't understand that for the longest time. He would give it back to her of the morning.
Yeah.
So basically, she had it from like 8 to 8. And he would give it back to her at 8 o'clock in the morning. And he'd say, when you're at home with us, you don't need that phone at night.
Mm.
You need to, like you just said, you need to disconnect from
Yeah.
the world. And I'm doing that to protect you, because there's people out there that want to hurt you, that want to harm you. And a lot of it has to do with this thing. And I couldn't agree more. And I don't know. I don't know if you have kids. I didn't hear that
I
part
do.
or not.
We have
How,
4.
you have 4. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Age 14 to 2.
Oh
So
my gosh.
Yeah.
At
We
least
like
they're
'em.
spread out.
But yes, so we see when you do that right, you have built-in help.
That's right. Oh, that's great.
Don't tell them that.
But I don't know how I don't know how I'm gonna handle that yet when Jess and I have kids,
Yeah.
and they have a phone.
Well, our oldest, he's 14. He'll be 15 in August, and the next one he'll be 12 in June. They both have phones currently, but we do have the same thing. They live on the kitchen counter at night,
Yeah.
and
I
that's
think
just
that's
the way
good.
it is. And they don't get it before. And I mean, with Apple, we can control screen time, so it shuts off after a
Yeah.
certain time. We put limits on stuff, and it is for that protection. That's our job as parents to
Yeah.
guide them to keep them from running right off the cliff. At some point, they're going to have to make their own decisions, but it's our
Yep.
job early on to help them figure out why they need to make the right one. And, at some point, we're telling them, here's the right choice because just you're not going to die. Don't put your hand on the saw blade. That's kind of clear. And
Right.
then as you get older, then you start giving more and more. And I'm just in the process of starting to give more and more with our oldest. And,
Right.
he's very responsible, 14-year-old.
Yeah.
He actually is very disciplined. He works at our local golf course in the mornings. We homeschool the kids, so he does his school. So he's normally up at 6:30,
Yeah.
doing school before he has to be at work at 8.
Yeah.
And I just think if he continues down that road of that discipline, I have no worries.
Yeah. I think that's great, because I mean, it is, I'm going to say your job, because I don't have kids, but it is your
Yeah.
job, parents' jobs, to lay that foundation.
Mm-hmm.
And you just hope and you pray that they lay the foundation for their kids as well.
Yeah.
And it's all about how we're brought up. And a lot of kids don't have that opportunity, and that's the sad part of the world we live in.
Mm-hmm.
Is not every kid has the same upbringing. Um, not every kid has the same upbringing as everyone, but we all have the same opportunities at some point. If
Well,
that makes sense.
isn't that the goal? Like, isn't that the whole point of America? Is
Yeah.
life, liberty, and we all get the equal pursuit of happiness.
Yes.
We're not necessarily guaranteed that, but we're guaranteed the pursuit. We can go.
Yeah.
We don't get it all the time, but we can go do it. Isn't that the point?
Yeah, that is the point. I had somebody ask me. It was another. I can't stand the race issue. I have such an issue with people calling each other racist, and it bothers me. It hurts me. But I had this individual ask me one time that they said, you have no idea what it's like to be black. And I said, you're right. Like I don't,
Mm-hmm.
but I know what it's like to be an American. And I said, and the thing is, these people get trapped like I get it. Like if you're a black male in inner city Minneapolis, like yeah, your opportunities are going to be a little bit different than mine. Like
Hmm.
I get that. But on the flip side, I believe it would be really hard, but you think about it, our ancestors did it. They had an opportunity to hop on a Mayflower or a ship a long time ago and come over and start a new life. So if you're living in downtown Minneapolis and you don't like it, then figure out a way to get out of there. You know, figure out a way, figure out a way, come find me and I'll put you to
Hmm.
work.
Yeah.
I'll give you a job
Yeah.
and I'll make sure you have the same opportunities I had.
Wait,
I
didn't
guess
you
that's
get?
what I want for everybody, you
Yeah.
know?
Didn't you guys get snow this morning?
We did.
Gross.
Dude, I'm looking at it right now. It's starting to melt. It's not on the roads anymore.
Oh, good.
Got like 6 or 7 inches, maybe.
Oh man,
You
it was
guys?
just fluttering in the air this morning a bit. Nothing on the ground. So when I saw your
Oh,
post on Instagram this morning, I thought, oh man, I'm glad I don't live there.
yeah. Well, they really needed it. They were starting to wonder if they were going to have any hay to
Mm.
cut.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm glad to see that they got a little moisture, and they're supposed to get more maybe tomorrow or next couple of days or something. So
Okay.
that's good. That's good.
Thinking of Minneapolis a little bit. Do we have a policing problem in America?
It's funny you ask that. I have a family full of law enforcement. Um, matter of fact, there's about seven family members that are all in police, and I don't think we have a policing problem. That not the policing that I've seen.
Mm-hmm.
Every city police is different. Every county police is different, but you know they the problem is when you're doing something wrong, people don't know right from wrong. That's what it comes down to. And if you're doing something wrong and somebody asks you, "Hey, like stop," then and you keep doing it, there's going to be an issue, you know? Um and that's the thing. The media like will never know. The media's job is not to tell people how to police because they don't have a clue
Mm-hmm.
until they put on that uniform. They have no idea what goes through those police officers' minds. And are you talking? I guess we could talk about the lady. I haven't really kept up on it. I heard about it, and that was about all. About the lady who shot that
Oh
kid
yeah.
that thought she grabbed her taser, but she grabbed her gun.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, I can't cast judgment on that police officer because I'm not in her shoes. You
Yeah.
know, like she was the only one that could make that decision, and I hate it.
Yeah.
I hate it that she made the wrong one.
Mm-hmm. Well, and
And
I was just talking to a friend this morning about that, the reality of that, and justified or not. Well, sorry, not justified, premeditated or not.
right,
That instance, in my mind, um, the consequence is going to be there. Period. That's a mistake you cannot make.
right,
And now I'm not like you. I'm not going to say yeah it was on purpose or no it wasn't. That's not. But to me that
yeah,
doesn't matter. The reality is the call she made in the heat of the moment was the wrong one,
yeah,
and the consequence has to be there now. Whether that is a small consequence or a really great one, that's not up to me. But you have to be willing, if you're going to put on that badge, that if you make the wrong call, there is consequences, and there has to be. Otherwise, we don't have any kind of order.
exactly. And they know that.
Mm-hmm.
Every police officer knows that.
Yeah.
And I promise you, when a police officer, deputy, sheriff, state trooper, when they leave their house of a morning, that is the last thing that they want to have to do
Oh, geez,
is
I can't imagine.
pull their firearm
Yeah.
out of their holster or even their taser. Like that's the last thing they want to do.
Mm-hmm.
They just want people to comply because 90% of the time, if you comply, nothing's going to happen. And in the way our system works today, even if you're going to be in trouble, you'll probably be out in a couple of hours. You know? So like that's what makes no sense to me.
Yeah.
These people, like, they want to run and they try not to comply, but our system has proven that they'll probably get let out at least 48 hours.
Right. Does that maybe, because the idea that just comply whether you should or not, or whether you're guilty or not, is that the proper thought that we need to be having toward law enforcement? Because it's something that I, as a dad, I am figuring out what I teach my children, what they're supposed to do. And obviously, I mean, the way we're raised is, they're there to protect, they're there to make sure everyone is kind of not going to hurt each other or hurt themselves. So, if they ask you to do something, do it. At what point does that become abused and abusive? Because there are times when, you put the badge on, and these are always the bad apples. They say that is an authority. That's a God complex at some level. So I now am the boss. You obey, period, or I'll shoot you. And of course, they don't say that out loud, but that's kind of the air that comes about.
Kind of a thought.
Is there a time when Americans shouldn't comply, let's say, in quotes?
So I think if a police officer pulls me over and he says, "Hey, you were speeding," even though I may not have been. There was one time I got pulled over. I was not speeding, because I've gotten a speeding ticket before, and I was like, "Oh yeah, I was speeding, my bad." And that cop gave me a warning. But this cop, he said I was going like, I don't know, it was like 49 and a 25. And I was following vehicles through town. There was cars behind me. Like, none of it made sense. And I was like 17 years old, maybe 18, I don't remember. And pulls me over, asks for my license and registration, tells me what I did wrong. And I just told him, I said, "Sir, there's really no way like I was speeding." And I said, "But if you think I was speeding, that's fine." And he told me, he said, "Well, if you don't think you were speeding, you'll have your day in court. Because, obviously you get a ticket, you pay it or go to court."
Right.
Well, I took it to court because I wasn't speeding. And needless to say, I got out of that ticket because I pleaded my case, and I had to pay a court fee. I mean, it ended up costing me a little money, but it didn't go on my driving record, but the thing is, like, I complied. I didn't sit there and argue with him and say, "No, I wasn't speeding." Like, "No, I'm not giving you my license." And like, I just complied with what he was doing, because I knew I was not in the wrong. And even if he did throw the book at me, like it was going to be okay. Cause like, I knew what I had done.
Yeah.
And maybe not everybody thinks that way. But sometimes you have to trust your instincts.
Yeah.
That when you're right, you're right.
Yeah.
And sometimes somebody's going to tell you that you're wrong, but you just got to go with it until the final say, because the judge gets the final say.
Right.
The police officer doesn't get the final say. The judge does.
Hey, that'll preach.
It will preach.
Getting back to the beginning here.
No, you're good.
Why does rodeo the lifestyle, why does it tend to be conservative?
Oh, I think because of our values, we don't take things for granted.
So just for a second, does that imply at some level that the not conservative doesn't have proper values, or are they just different?
I would say it's a different type of values. Okay. A conservative value is believing in your country. And I believe conservative people tend to be more patriotic, and I don't know why that is. We're almost, I don't want to say conceited, but we're kind of conceited in a sense. Like, we think our country's the best, and there's there's nothing you can do about it because we live here and this is America, and we've almost got like a chip on our shoulders in a sense. And I mean, it's kind of just the conservative, pioneer, settle in the West, got to be tough, got to be gritty. You work hard for what you have. Nobody hands you anything. Like, we're not looking for a handout. Not everybody gets a trophy. At the end of the day, we want people to stay out of our business. So obviously that's conservative in a sense. Small government is better because small government stays out of our way, lets us do our deal, like just leave us alone. And I think that's the rodeo mentality of conservatism. Like, basically just leave us alone. All we want to do is rodeo. All we want to do is carry our guns and go to
ride
rodeo,
our horses, right?
and go shoot coyotes and hogs every chance we get.
Yeah. What's the craziest thing you've seen in an arena?
Oh, the craziest thing. Two things. I didn't actually see him physically. It was just on video. There was a clown that tackled a civilian. This person ran into the arena.
Like a streaker almost?
Yeah, kind of like a streaker. And this clown weighed, I'll just tell you, he weighed 260. He can do a backflip. He's the most athletic man I've ever seen. He could play defensive end somewhere. He just saw this guy running through the deal, and he kind of looked up on the buck and shoot, saw a guy on a committee, and he's like, "Is that guy supposed to be out here?" And the guy on the committee's like, "No." So he just runs out there and just whacks this guy. And the guy was obviously intoxicated. He had been drinking and didn't even feel a thing. But man, it was hilarious, especially watching the video. It was funny.
Oh,
and there was one other time. I don't know why it has to do with clowns. Somebody must have something out for clowns. But there was a guy.
They do tend to put themselves right in harm's way.
They really do. There was a clown in the middle of an act. And this guy come out there and was just mouthing him, just straight up mouthing him. So this clown, it was like Nolan. Have you ever seen Nolan Ryan grab Ventura? And he's just like popping him. That's kind of what that ended up being. So Liesl Harris, Harris, and that video is on YouTube somewhere. That's nice. pretty good watching. You have to look that up.
So where are you? When are you going to be announcing next? What's next on your schedule?
So I've got a Youth Rodeo Association finals here in a couple of weeks in Oklahoma City, Chickasha, Oklahoma to be exact. Some friends of mine, they help put that on, produce that for their kids, and going down there to announce it. And then I'll go to Mesquite, Texas, the first weekend of June. So that's kind of the schedule. I don't have any rodeos in May right now, which is kind of weird. First time in 7 years, I don't have a rodeo in the month of May, but COVID, still feeling the effects of COVID, in a sense. But it's going to be a pretty busy year.
Yeah.
It'll be pretty busy.
On your website, CoreyProAnnouncer.com,
Yep.
Corey with a K, that is. You have sponsors. What's that?
Yep. So these sponsors, they're awesome. Wrangler, they send me all sorts of clothes and shirts and jeans and jackets, vests, and I pretty much every day have some kind of Wrangler apparel on, which is great. American Hat Company, of all days, I don't even have my American on. I got one. You can see it right back there in the back, though, on that side.
Oh, yeah, up on top. It's wrapped in plastic.
Boxes, too.
Nice.
American Hat Company, they send me all my hats, felt hats, straw hats. I usually call the best hat store, and those guys, they will set you up. They're the best in the world, in my opinion. 100X helmets, they send my chaps that I wear while I'm announcing horseback. Which this year I've got 7 rodeos I'll be announcing horseback, so those things will get worn quite a bit. And I think WW Livestock still on there. WW Livestock's on there. They America's #1 ranch and rodeo equipment. They do a lot for me.
Montana Silversmith.
Yeah, Montana Silversmith actually sent. I haven't made it public yet because we have to wait, but I can say it on here. They sent us our cake topper for our wedding,
Oh,
which is really sweet.
that's cool.
So folks at Montana Silversmith, they're pretty awesome.
Nice.
But yeah, great people on that page for sure.
Well, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Where's the best place on the social medias for people to follow what you're doing?
It just depends. I have Facebook. Just Corey Keith on Facebook. It's like you said, it's with a K, KoryKeeth. And then Instagram, that seems to be where most of my followers are. Which is pretty cool. But I post a lot of encouraging things on there, post a lot of scriptures, and just try to encourage people through life, because life's hard. Life's not easy. But yeah, Facebook and Instagram, that's your best bets.
You have recently begun like speaking, like preaching kind of speaking, correct? Around?
So we I've always been in the ministry. We've done a lot of music ministry in the past with playing the guitar and singing, and we've kind of been doing some more speaking engagements, and I've got a couple lined out. There's probably 3 or 4 places I'll be speaking in the next couple of months. Most of them are at rodeos. Like they'll have a cowboy church service at a rodeo somewhere, which is really cool. And there's actually a couple of churches we're involved with. Didn't go there last year because of COVID, but Thousand Hills Ranch Church in Woodward, Oklahoma, we go there a lot. Usually speak there at least once a year. Got a church in Enid, Oklahoma that just called the other day, a little cowboy church there. We're going to go visit sometime. And cowboy church at Springfield, Missouri, we go visit them. And got friends in Granbury, Texas, got a church down there. And I mean, there's churches all over the place. And we've just been going and sharing a testimony and what God's been doing. And he's been pretty incredible. So I was actually not very far from your house last year. We had probably go to jail for this if they knew this, but it was in Minnesota. They had a church service at one of my friends' houses, and I come up there and spoke. It was the weekend before Easter last year, which was really cool. So, and it was my first illegal church service because there wasn't supposed to be any gatherings in Minnesota.
Isn't that terrible? In America, you could have something like that, and that would ever be a thing.
Crazy. I put it on my resume though. Hashtag Freedom Defender.
That's it. Excellent.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Well, Corey, I appreciate you taking the time. If you're ever up in these parts, I would love to meet you for real in person and have you in the studio. It'd be a blast.
Yeah, I'll be, let's see, your Esteline. How far do you live from Esteline, South Dakota?
Oh, brother, probably an hour and a half, maybe.
Yeah, I think
maybe
middle of June we'll be up there in Esteline at the rodeo. So
awesome.
If you want to come by and see
cool.
us,
That'd be super. Yeah.
Yeah, let me know if you're coming. We'll get you in.
Now we're talking.
Yeah, that's
fantastic.
Right.
Do I get to sit up with you in the booth?
Well, you might.
Hey,
who knows?
Hey, I'll bring some Heil microphones for you.
Hey, I need a couple of those.
Excellent. Well, cool, Corey. Thank you again for taking the time to sit down and do this chat and responding to my probably strange inquiry on Instagram, but thank you. It's been fun.
Oh, it's been great. I've enjoyed it.
Yeah, let's do it again one of these days.
Yeah, keep doing what you're doing.
Absolutely. Thanks so much. Yeah, thank you very much, and
you bet.
Have a great day. Enjoy the snow.
Oh, fixing to go sledding. Perfect.
Excellent. Thank you so much. You bet. Awesome. Cool. That will do it. Thank you, man. That was a blast.
Yeah, it was good. It was good.
I could keep going, but yeah, it's fun. Those on
we might have to do it again sometime. So.
Oh yeah.